Hey guys! Today I have something a little different because I thought it would be helpful to share my accepted RISD portfolio and artist journey. I have decided to do it in clear sections depending on what you're interested in, so here are the timestamps. And to keep the video as short as possible, I've decided to put my stats and my slideroom descriptions of each piece in the description box for those who are interested. As many people say, these videos are a way to pay forward the help of others who shared their portfolios. I especially wanted to put mine out there because I didn't begin seriously working on it until junior year, and in fact, all the pieces I included were created within a span of 6 months. Some people may think it's too late for them to try to apply to art school because they still haven't made any quality pieces as an upperclassman or don't have as much experience as others. So if you're one of these people, I just wanted to give you hope and push you to try and trust your creativity. I had and still have that quote as my phone wallpaper for the duration of my journey because it really comforted me and gave me more confidence in my abilities, even if it was false confidence at times. My portfolio admittedly isn't the most outstanding or impressive, but I'm still proud of it, and I hope it shows you a more attainable result that can still be successful. As for my background, I was always interested in art, but around middle school I hit a blip in the road that lasted until sophomore year. I made very little progress because I made very little work. My life was heavily centric to academia and activities in general that I didn't fully enjoy, which left me little time and energy to dedicate towards art. In the process, I lost a sense of my identity. You know that one Albert Einstein quote? I felt like a fish trying to climb a tree, longing for the ocean, knowing that is where I belong, but having no idea of how to even get to the shoreline. I thought my inability to climb reflected my inability to swim, and I thought of myself simply as a lazy individual. My struggle in those activities made me feel utterly inadequate. I questioned my work ethic and all other possible endeavors in the future, and wondered if I would or could achieve anything in my lifetime. However, I was able to find clarity through exploration, struggle, and a bit of luck. I embarked on a new path, one that I forged myself, which led me to decide, or more like remember, that I wanted to pursue a creative career in the visual arts. It was one of the most difficult decisions to let go and quit everything I had been involved in for years at that point, some of them over a decade, and take a leap of faith. Every authoritative figure I confided in advised against it, and I understand why. I would lose a lot of progress. It was a full 180 right in the middle of high school, and they only wanted the best for me. The mindset seemed to be that I only had to endure 2 more years, and I myself considered that. But then I thought 2 years is a long time that I wanted to enjoy, not endure. Additionally, I saw quitting as giving up, a sign of weakness and of being a failure. But I was able to rewire my mindset, and I realized that some things you need to give up if you don't want to give up on your happiness. Quitting is not always a bad thing if it means choosing your battles wisely. Strength is not determined by how much pain you can tolerate and allow for it to continue, but it's determined by your ability to get up despite the pain and actively make a change. Ultimately, I knew that this is my life. I no longer want to be a mere passenger in it, hoping things will change but doing nothing to bring forth that change. Even if my inconsistencies will look bad on my college apps, even if others will judge me, even if I'm the only one who is on my side, I have to still choose my side because my happiness is my responsibility. I wanted a purpose again. I also had a quiet inkling that despite all that I have not yet proven, I had it in me, and I had so much more to give. I think this is a common experience that many people share, getting lost and having to find your way again. I was fortunate enough to attend an art camp during the summer of junior and senior year where I honed my skills. I know not everyone can afford to, especially under this year's circumstances, so I highly suggest creating a mini studio space somewhere in your home where you can truly dedicate yourself to your work, maybe even have some artist friends join you. But one of the keys to create lots of good work in a pinch is a good workspace. I was extremely nervous and shy at first because the whole environment and culture was unfamiliar to me. But as an upperclassman, I knew I had better fake it till I make it and get comfortable. I had to improve and I had to do it fast. We spent 7 hours in the studio 6 days a week. I observed what the students around me were doing and picked up some techniques. At night, I studied references hard and sketched regularly to keep ideas forming and flowing. It was tiresome and difficult at times, but also invigorating, as I finally could give my all in something I cared about. In all my previous activities, I always carried a sense of guilt for not being able to work as hard as my peers because I didn't enjoy it. The summer of senior year is where the real work of creating my portfolio began. Here are the results of that summer and a little into senior year. So, instead of supplemental essays, RISD has the assignment, which you probably know about already. This year was 2 parts of one main prompt. We basically had to observe and create a visual reaction to a phenomenon or object in the natural world, then transform it or modify it as the second part. For my natural phenomenon, I chose komarebi, which is Japanese for the sunlight that filters through the leaves. This idea was inspired by a short film by Wong Fu Productions I remembered watching years ago. Komarebi is such a simple but beautiful concept, and one that I thought I could create something interesting with. I knew I wanted to play with varying degrees of opacity, and at first I wanted to fashion some sort of headpiece, which I went through several iterations of, but ultimately I changed my mind and decided to create a plexiglass box. It was kind of a pain, as I had to purchase a handsaw and clamps and wood and create this particular tool to cut the plexiglass to size, which is a very loud process. Apparently, the plastic can melt when heated by an electric saw and damage it. Otherwise, I would have chosen that route in a heartbeat. I was kind of stumped for the second part, especially with what exactly constituted a transformation instead of a separate creation. But I eventually came up with the idea to create a short video by using the box as a shadow protector to incorporate the sunlight aspect of komarebi, as I felt the first part heavily focused on the layered leaves. I took about 30 sheets of watercolor paper and rapidly spread watered down acrylic paint with fabric to create texture on both sides to save paper. I rotated between each sheet as a background and photographed different shadow angles on it. Then I edited each photo a bit using the app Color Story and experimented until I found a cool effect where the colors turned into green and pink, which were the same colors in the box, and tied them together nicely. Then I used a GIF maker online to quickly flip through the photos and create the illusion of movement. Once I added some forest and bird sound effects, I was finished with the second part of the assignment. Following predecessor's advice, I ordered my pieces so it began and ended strongly, and the weaker pieces were in the middle so they would be less memorable. I will state the title and give my thoughts on the process and execution. Again, the descriptions I wrote in slideroom for each are in the description box. My first piece is Les Sœurs. This was my first acrylic painting in a long while, and I think my tendencies toward design were budding through my work. This is actually an abstraction of this reference photo I found on Pinterest. Feel free to follow me there for more art inspiration. And during that time, I was super inspired by the Cubist movement, which we studied shortly in art class. My second piece is Peekaboo. This one was created later in the summer, where they told me that I needed an ink piece. Actually, it was intended to be more messy and abstract, but during the process I got carried away with obsessing over exact angles that it became more accurate to the photo. But I still really like how it turned out. For fun, I added some leopards strewn throughout this otherwise serious piece. My favorite one is this one at the top with its butt sticking out. My third one is a diptych titled Summer. It was not intended to be a series, but they were too similar to be separate. The first painting is Tutti Frutti, which was the first painting I did the summer of senior year. I was mostly inspired by Sophie Ann Chag's work. The second painting was created near the end of that summer, called Vagabond. This was influenced by Adam Curlow. This series turned out to be a transformation of what summer felt like as I aged, beginning as pure fun to a bit more of a complex liminal space. Then I included my sketchbook as a GIF. Using a sketchbook rigorously was probably one of the most valuable experiences because it allows for a certain freedom and regularity of experimentation. I really believe it significantly accelerated my improvement. Next up is Lounge. Honestly, I don't really like this one, but they said I needed a more painterly piece, so I obliged. It's okay, but I'm glad it was a quick one. Next is Brainstorm. In Slideroom, I allowed it 2 slots to show photos and a video. It probably was one of the most time-consuming and expensive projects out of my whole portfolio, but it was worth it, I think. I was partially inspired by a project I saw in one of Cat Creature's vlogs with the bedroom in a massive clouds and some abstract 3D digital art, but I put my own spin on it and added some cool neon-esque light strips. Then is Comfort Zone. Honestly, I could have included some detail shots because the line work is the strength of these illustrations, but oh well. It's one of the weaker pieces, but I like the colorful and graphic backgrounds that contrast with the more dimensional figures. It was fun to explore some exaggerated proportions. Next is La Vie en Rose. Honestly, this was another one they had me do for some variety and to exhibit any technical skills I had, and it turned out okay. It was a real pain to finish, but I'm glad it's done. I just find I get bored of realism quick, so I chose to draw some of my makeup to make it more interesting. The Glossier bubble wrap was especially droning. However, I think the process of realism, long periods of time focusing on the products and making them the focal point, is indicative of consumerism. But I like my idea of using real bubble wrap as a stamp to create a pattern. The idea behind this was stronger than the execution, so I thought it was enough to still include. Next is Play. This was an early gouache piece after I had begun my AP art portfolio, which I also intend to do a video on eventually. Once I do, I'll link it down below. I think it's simple but cute. Honestly, I just really wanted to paint some slides. Then I have Escape. It's an early digital work of mine, my take on a self-portrait. I also experimented with whether I like line art or not. Now I've decided I don't really like it, but I still think this turned out pretty cool. Oh, and that's my name in Chinese, in case you were wondering. Next up are my figure drawings. I didn't include a description because I didn't think it was necessary to assign some deep meaning behind it when it's purely a showing of my technical abilities. If you can't access a live session, I highly recommend the website Croquis Cafe. I basically only used that except for one live session where the middle one was from that the art camp hosted. Anyways, I had never done any figure drawing before, so I was nervous I would be bad at it, but I was able to pick it up fairly quickly. We had a week of figure drawing, and I filled up the whole pad of newsprint that I eventually had to use the back of each page. I recommend relentless repetition and give yourself many to choose the best works from. Practice giving yourself 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 or 10 seconds for quick poses, a variety of time spans to challenge yourself. If you want to try my style of figure drawing, I would begin with a quick line for the spine because everything else is determined by the position of the spine. Don't worry about the details of the feet, hands, or face. Use line weight to indicate light and shadow. You can create a quick background by lightly scribbling the side of the charcoal and using the chamois to spread it out in circles. And most importantly, think of it as creating what you understand of the body, rather than copying what you see as a two-dimensional image. You don't have to make it an exact replica. Exaggerate the right angles and proportions. Draw like a sculptor. I had never even studied any anatomy, but if you're in a crunch for time like I was, just fake it by thinking like a sculptor. Next is Nubivagant, also part of my AP submission. I'm super happy with this one. It is so cute and it was fun to mix a lot of interesting mediums. This was also shortly after Komorebi, so transparency was still on my mind. I love how whimsical it is. Next is Kaleidoscope. With this one, I was discovering my love for surface design. It's another one that shines more conceptually rather than visually, although the gold gilding was super fun to add. Anyways, during the summer, I was doing some independent research on the chaos theory and butterfly effect, an interest of mine that stemmed from BTS. If you're not familiar with them, they have this universe and immersive storyline in their music videos, which employed these concepts, and I became really interested in understanding them. Then is Solitude. This was actually my very first gouache piece. I was super excited to try out gouache because it combined the flexibility and low maintenance of watercolor with the opacity of acrylic, both of which seemed perfect for my art style. I really explored the limits of gouache by watering it down a lot for the background, and then using barely any water, making it completely opaque for the figures. Next is Misfit. This was an early digital piece created around Halloween time, so I wanted to play with the concept of fear and other negative emotions and kind of humanize them. I remembered someone saying how negative emotions should be accepted just as trying to protect us, so I portrayed them as misunderstood inner monsters. After Misfit is an animation that is still unfinished to this day. Hopefully one day I'll finish it, but until then I want to keep it a surprise, so I will not be showing this one just yet. Next is Yin Yang. This is another one which is stronger conceptually rather than visually, but I still like it. Another surface design through which I discovered the copy and paste feature in Procreate. Super handy for stuff like this. Honestly, the description was a journal entry, but I thought it matched nicely with the yin-yang concept I was exploring. The second to last piece is Balter. This is also in my AP portfolio. I had this concept of a dancing figure, which you can also see in my sketchbook, and capturing multiple moments of time in one frame, which originated from the Cubist movement. I was also trying to get back into primary colors because I had been obsessed with secondary colors for a while. And finally, another one of my favorites, Nephelabata. This is also a highlight piece in my AP portfolio, and I was discovering my growing interest in space and expressing it two-dimensionally. My own self-discovery was greatly influenced by Marie Kondo's philosophy, which shaped the way I interpret space and how physical and mental spaces are interconnected. Some final pieces of advice I have for late bloomers like me or anyone who wants to improve quickly is to strive with any confidence you can fill yourself up with, even if it's feigned at first. Find a mantra that uplifts you and keep it somewhere you'll see regularly, like your phone wallpaper, so every time you see it, you internalize it just a bit more until you find that you don't have to pretend anymore. Something I've learned is that if your brain can trick you into believing you're not good enough, that you won't be able to achieve anything, you can trick your brain right back into thinking the opposite as well. Chances are, the opposite is the truth. Know your strengths and exploit them. Magnify them. Since I knew I was more of a designer rather than a fine artist, I wouldn't do a realistic oil painting, but instead focus on digital illustrations and flat, clean blocks of color, composition, and surface design. But also include some variety. If some pieces are weaker visually, strengthen them by adding an intriguing concept behind it. Each piece has two parts, the idea and execution, and if one is weaker, strengthen the other part. Use a sketchbook regularly, and figure drawing. Get good at these skills, and the other aspects of your art will improve. Stray away from cliches. At this point, many concepts are overdone, and you want to stand out with a distinct, individual voice. Become good at accepting critiques. I was scared of this at first, but eventually I came to enjoy it. I loved hearing others' thoughts on my pieces. Think of critiques not as insults, but as a respectful gesture that indicates a mutual understanding that you can do better. It's a compliment to your abilities, and they want you to reach your greater potential. Also, honestly critique others if they ask. Help each other improve. Surround yourself with others like you so you can bounce ideas and energy off of each other, or at least find a way to replicate the studio experience since you may be learning remotely. Be open and conscious of the inspiration all around you. Don't wait for it. Be proactive and seek it out. As you saw, I found inspiration from many sources: Pinterest, YouTube videos, music, fashion, nature, past personal experiences, other artists, art movements in history, books, math, science, philosophy, even my own journal. It's all around you, and it's just waiting for you to transform it into something amazing. Finally, this may be cheesy, but have fun. You cannot lose the fun in the process, or you will get lost like I did in the beginning of high school. Find the joy, and it will be your fuel to get you through the hard times, because it's not going to be easy, but it can be fun if you make it. Don't take everything too seriously, and have trust in the universe that wherever you end up is where you belong. Trust your creativity, and good luck.